Diary of an Identity Theft Survivor, Part 14. I believe it would be Part 14 by now. It's been a year since my last video, and it just occurred to me to check my YouTube channel because there's been so much going on, and I just realized that it's literally 10 years ago in February that I made my first video of Diary of an Identity Theft Victim at the time, and I changed the name later to Diary of an Identity Theft Survivor, or ITS, It's Diary. And I just thought it's very important for me to make an update, as it's been 10 years literally this month since I first started to record those diaries, when I was with very limited resources in a very difficult situation, and I first started to fear for my life, and as a consequence of the fact that identity theft is something that is so prevalent. It's happened to so many, I'm sure there's so many cases, but yet to date it is still not a crime that is seen as very serious, in spite of the fact that identity theft is something that leads to many other crimes being committed using this identity that the person committing allegedly these crimes will not be held accountable for, or not even be associated with, because they are not using their own identity but the identity of someone else that they have taken or stolen. I am still suffering after 10 years because of a lack of either thought, or a lack of analysis, or a lack of understanding of how deep and how large and the real magnitude of this problem, and what can happen to a person's life once their identity is taken, and depending on who takes that identity information, personal information, and what they use it for. Now, the reason why I'm making this video today, and the point I want to make, there's about 2 points that I'm going to try to make with this video, and I'll try not to make it too long, because I know some people don't have the patience to listen to other people droning on and on about things, even if it's something significant, and even if it's something that may be significant to them personally. Most oftentimes people don't see the problem until it's too late, until the damage is already done, until they now find themselves in a situation where they realize that, oh, perhaps if they'd have thought about it a little bit more earlier, they could have prevented anything more serious from occurring. And this is partly why I started to make the videos, because I thought, well, at the end of the day, nobody believes what I'm saying, but if I keep a diary for myself, it also helps me to feel like I'm doing something constructive, and it also leaves a body of evidence, which I would hope would not be my body, but some effort to communicate that there was a problem. And this is now dating back to 10 years ago in February 2015 when I started these videos. And the 2 points I want to make is this. One, it's a big subject in the news right now, not just in the UK, but around Europe, about immigration and the issue with illegal immigrants coming into the country looking for opportunities, and England is having a big problem with dealing with that, and the overburdening of our resources and the state's resources, welfare department, Department for Work and Pensions resources, when we are taking so many people who are coming into this country. Now, most of the news stories and most of the discussions are really around people who enter the country illegally on boats coming across the channel, and in various ways how they get into this country. And once they get here and they're seeking asylum, or, you know, whatever the case may be, how do we deal with the numbers of people? But up until now, what hasn't been clearly identified in the news anyway, I'm not sure if the authorities have considered that oftentimes, apart from the people coming on the boats, there are people who obtain either fraudulent or stolen identities so that they can enter the country. And once these people enter the country and they have your identity and they're using it, of course, oftentimes when people are desperate, they will do all kinds of things to try to make certain that they can stay and that they don't get caught or found out doing anything illegal that would cause them to be, deported or otherwise, turned out of the country. And the problem is that up until now, I don't think that there's been a great deal of analysis given to the fact that innocent persons can have their identity taken. And if somebody is involved with high-level organised crime, they may be in a much more powerful position to defend themselves and whatever it is that they have actually obtained, whether legally or illegally. They may be in a position now where it can be difficult legally for the law to tackle them, because how do you know? And so that leads straight into my second point. What is the second point? I don't know how clear I made this in any of my earlier videos, but what really alarmed me when I was still in Jamaica and trying to fight to stay alive, and knew that a lot of effort had been made to get copies of my document, to get old cancelled passports and other things that went missing and that were taken from me along the way. And I have made videos, and there's a whole list of things that were taken. What was presented to me, or what came to the surface as I was doing my own little investigations and trying to research and find out more about what was really going on, is that I know how desperate some people are in other parts of the world where the system doesn't respect people's human rights or legal rights, where people are desperate to get out of a state of poverty or underprivileged, lack of opportunities. Just like in the Caribbean, in Jamaica where I was, there are people desperate. Now, I had not lost, but it was stolen from me in a very significant place. My portfolio, when I used to model, I had a whole portfolio with lots of pictures when I was much younger, but my face hasn't changed much. And I was made aware of the fact that there are some people who, believe it or not, are willing to take somebody's photograph, and if they have similar features, there are people who are willing to change their features. Like the movie Face Off, there are people who are willing to do plastic surgery, to go and have their nose adjusted or other features adjusted, who have money, but they might not have the opportunity to travel. And there are people who are willing to go and change their features and face so they can look enough like that stolen identity, that the stolen license, driving license, whatever photo that they have of this person with a citizenship that they would like to acquire. There are people who are willing to change their face. That's how desperate they are. Do the people who are in authority in immigration in the Home Office in the UK, the police and people who investigate these crimes, are they aware of how far some people are willing to go in order to change the way they look? Are they aware that if somebody presents themselves with a piece of, whether photocopied or lost or stolen or cancelled passport, claiming that this is their identification document, how would they be able to tell the difference between the person who is the victim of the crime and the person who is the assailant or who has committed the crime and who has stolen? How are they, it's not as if they're going to admit what they've done. It's not as if they're ever going to tell the truth. These people are desperate. Oftentimes they feel like this may be their only method, or they haven't thought of a better idea. The immigration system is too slow, the court systems are so slow, it takes so long. So if this is what they think is their best chance of getting in to the country and staying here and acquiring assets and whatever else that they want, how are the authorities, how is anyone going to be able to tell the difference between the real genuine person and the person who has stolen this identity, especially if they have money to spend, if they have money to grease palms, and they have acquired money through all kinds of illegal activities, and they're involved in huge organised crime gangs and all kinds of things. How is it that they would be able to police that? How will they know? And please, before you suggest or even think about asking the person's family, when serious criminals are involved in a committing of a crime and they're that desperate and determined, how is it that you will be able to determine, one, if this person's family is not being blackmailed or manipulated or threatened to comply with the requests of this person to support their application or to support what they're doing? Number two, how would they even know if that person's family themselves are even genuine, or if they're even involved in such activities, or if they've got themselves mixed up in that world and they're now just looking out for themselves? And number three, how do we define, and I think that's for another video, how do we define and determine what actually is family? Because the conventional world that we used to live in, where we had traditional family values and culture, seems to have been mostly lost in recent years. And everybody is just trying to survive and take care of themselves. How do you ensure that you can then really verify this person and their identity? Identity verification is a very important subject. It's not just about identity theft itself, but this verification process. And when companies, whether online or offices physically that you can go into, when they ask you to see your identification and you show them your identity, that's one thing. But oftentimes they don't ask you. When they photocopy your license or other documents and they say it's for them to process and they keep it on their files, how do they ensure that that information is stored securely? There are data protection acts, GDPRS, and all of these things and all of these procedures, and we do our best to comply. But how do we guarantee? There is no guarantee that you can safely and securely store any information on any computer or anywhere at all where there is human input. There is always space for error. There is always a space for leakage. How do you ensure the integrity of the data that is stored? How do you ensure that our identification information, our personal confidential information, is actually kept confidential? How do we ensure that? How do we as citizens do anything when we have no authority to police that? Do we trust? I don't trust, after all that I've been through, any one, let alone any computer storage system or any institution at all. Because of the things that I've seen with my own eyes and experience, I have a lack of trust. And I think I'm not the only one who is lacking trust right now, because I see there are a lot of people who've been through a lot of things, and many of us are really living in fear because we know that this world that we live in is full of so much corruption. It isn't safe, not just for myself, it isn't safe for anyone. And the only way that it will be more safe, no one can ever guarantee tomorrow. Life is, here, it's not, tomorrow is not promised. There is no guarantee. But the only way we can upgrade our systems of security is by really being willing to totally rethink and reconfigure our minds so that we can totally be able to analyze the full altruistic nature of the problems that we're facing, and not keep on lulling ourselves into a false sense of security and living in an illusion where we feel that we can trust what people say or what people's families say about them, or that, witnesses cannot be blackmailed or manipulated or almost forced under duress to comply with, and even going to court. Even recently, I had an experience going to court. When a person goes to court to give evidence, do they even verify that person's identity by using perhaps not only a piece of identification, but by using a bank card and swiping like we have to swipe at some places in order to just, make a card transaction so that they can also verify that this person is also a bank account holder with the same name that is on the identity document that they have used. I didn't see any identity verification taking place when I went to court recently. So how do we even ensure that whoever it is that has per se given evidence is actually genuinely the person who is stated has given evidence? There are some serious flaws and some very grey areas in the system that we are all being put in a vulnerable situation because of the fact that there are a lot of things that need to be rectified. And I'm not just saying this for myself, but I really do hope that things improve for the better and for the greater good, for not just myself, but for all of us who deserve a better than this. This is 2025, 10 years after I made my first diary. And it's sad to see that my situation hasn't vastly improved, and that there is still so many things that need to be improved. And with so much going on with wars and all these things and people worrying about security, there's a lot of housekeeping that needs to be done. Not just myself in my own personal world, but there is housekeeping that needs to be done so that people can, we don't have to live in, Fort Knox, but bolt and lock files and keep things in a manner that we minimize the opportunity for human intervention and corruption and leakage of people's personal information. I'll leave it right there because honestly, with all that I've been through, I have quite a lot that I could say, and I don't wish to go on. And I know that oftentimes I feel that I'm not being heard. And it saddens me to know that perhaps these videos will only maybe be seen as relevant or important when I'm no longer here. And that's a sad fact, but I have to face reality. Life is precious. And we are all in a vulnerable situation as long as we continue to believe and not to know.